Hi, this is Carl from Linguagenesis, and what I want to do in this particular video is to speak about a revamp which I produced a couple of years ago of an already existing audio book course, originally released by the BBC in 1996 for the German language and entitled BBC Deutsch Plus. Now, before I go on to speak in a little bit more detail about the content of that particular course, what I want to do is to just deliberate briefly on what our stereotypes are, what our preconceptions are, either as modern foreign language learners or otherwise, of audio CD book courses which are readily available on the market and which we might decide as potential modern foreign language learners to either buy from a bookshop, purchase online using either eBay or Amazon, for example, or borrowing from the public library for a certain period of time before returning them at a later date. Now, what my personal experience has been in coming across audio CD book courses, usually in bookshops and also at the public library here in my hometown of Barnsley, is that you have a textbook which, when you open the pages, is seemingly divided into a number of different topics, and the sequencing of those topics is what is being used as the initial point of departure for teaching mainly ab initio learners of a modern foreign language. Mainly, I think, for the beginners in a modern foreign language, these audio CD book courses are mainly intended for that particular group, that particular market. And I think if we actually compare the sequence of topics in the audio CD book course with the sequence of topics which we would find on a beginner's course being taught in either mainstream or further education, further adult education in a mainstream college, would be very similar in each case. So we might, let's say, for example, start off with learning basic greetings, learning interjections, for example, the translations into a modern foreign language of words and phrases such as hello, goodbye, how are you, see you later, and so forth. We might then look at the ways in which we are able to form basic questions such as how are you, how's it going, I'm fine, I'm terrible, I'm very well, and so forth. How old are you? I am so many years of age. Where do you live? I live in so and so, or I come from so and so. We might then take a little step back and look at more elementary, more basic elements of a modern foreign language, more basic aspects of a modern foreign language, such as the numbers and the letters of the alphabet, which, although isolated and reduced to a very simple level, can indeed be applied to other learning scenarios and prove extremely effective in the learning of a modern foreign language, learning in general, especially at a basic level for ab initio learners. So numbers can obviously apply to dates, to calendar dates, to clock times, to people's ages, to birthdays, and also to the costs of products and or items which we might purchase in a shop. As far as letters of the alphabet are concerned, we can use these to clarify and further our understanding of the pronunciation, the rules of pronunciation which govern a modern foreign language. We can use them to ask how to spell a word which we feel we might need to know, and therefore we ask the translation of that word from either the modern foreign language into our mother tongue or from our mother tongue into the target language. And if, for example, we've booked into a hotel and we come across the receptionist might ask us how we spell our surname, and therefore we would need the letters of the alphabet in order to clarify that. So I think the sequence of topics, going from greetings and then on to the application of numbers and letters of the alphabet to getting to know you questions, would also apply to the very initial stages of teaching a beginner's course in mainstream and further or adult education. But as far as the subsequent topics are concerned, if, for example, we're teaching a beginner's course over a period of 8 to 10 weeks, then in the later weeks we would also be looking at similar topics sequenced in a similar way. For example, eating out, ordering a food, a meal, a drink, or a snack, asking for directions, buying something in a shop or a chemist, changing money in the bank, getting around on public transport, going to a little desk at the train station and booking tickets, asking how much tickets cost, ascertaining as to whether a single or a return ticket would be more beneficial, just basic things like this. And if we look at the BBC Deutsch Plus course, then we find that the sequence of topics is indeed applicable to that course as well. But let me just now tell you a few things which I've done as part of the revamp of the Lingua Genesis revamp of the BBC Deutsch Plus course. I've incorporated much more variety in terms of the different exercises which the learners get to do. I've also ensured that where set phrases have been given, that I've explained the literal translations of those phrases. I've also added additional pieces, elements of vocabulary within phrases to actually enable the potential learners of one foreign language, of the German language in this instance, to actually widen their vocabulary and see just how easy it is to apply additional words within a set phrase and see how the syntax of the German language actually works, how it functions. I've also, as I mentioned, ensured that anyone who buys the Lingua Genesis revamp is able to see how set phrases are translated word for word, because obviously if you teach a set phrase and you teach a set translation, even if that's not the literal translation, people can go away thinking, this word means this word and that word means that word. But obviously we have to be very careful. And if we actually do apply the Lingua Genesis method of teaching a word for word translation, then we're obviously encouraging more independent learning, and we're giving a wider and more realistic understanding of how the German language does in fact operate. Something else which I've done as well is I've included my own exercises. I've actually, when producing the paper-based resources for any particular topic, I've actually put together additional sentences using similar pieces of vocabulary. I've actually lengthened some of the examples of phrases or sentences which are my own making, and I've put them down as part of one of the tasks, and I've encouraged the learners, some of whom have been purchasers of the materials on eBay, but others have been students within a classroom situation, to actually look at the English wording of the sentences, questions or phrases in question, and actually translate these first of all verbally, and then actually write them down afterwards. I think the majority of learners would actually prefer to look at something written down, translate it in writing first, and then attempt to actually read what they've got in the target language, and then just simply read from that. But I think we actually need to use the topsy-turvy approach and actually speak before we write, because obviously speaking is more common than writing. So that's the introduction to what we've done for the BBC Deutsch Plus course, the Lingua Genesis revamp. If you do have any more questions, feel free to send an email.